Hello and welcome to a pro basketball show with me, Andrew Willett. We're in the midst of WNBA coverage and excited to bring our content to you. You can catch a pro basketball show on streaming services such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify with live broadcasts on playback. Make sure to follow us at APBShow on social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram, with more coming soon. Without further ado, a pro basketball show. Hello and welcome to a pro basketball show. There is a lot going on in the WNBA. We are just over a week into the action. Tons of great storylines. The Las Vegas Aces among them. But today I decided we're going to talk a little bit, take a step back, talk about a different team today. And that's going to be the LA Sparks. And that is because before the season, I was a little bit off on where I had this LA Sparks team. And so today I felt it was worthy to go in and talk about LA and how they stacked up in the league. And to do that, I brought in none other than Edwin Garcia. He writes for the Silver Screen and Roll about the Lakers, the Sparks, and everything in between for Lakers. That's for SB Nation, at Lakers SBN, and at Swish Appeal. So Edwin, thank you so much for taking the time. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk Sparks with you and kind of dig into what the seasons look like in very, very early parts of the season.
It is a very young season. We should preface this with that fact because a lot has gone on, but there is still so much basketball to be played. But 3 games into the season for the Sparks specifically, they sit at 1-2 right now. Edwin, I told you I was going to ask you what is the state of the Sparks at this point, and I'm going to start here because before the season I had the Sparks last in the WNBA. One came in, and I'm feeling like I am an idiot for making that call. 2 games later, I still think I'm way off, but it looks a little bit better because they played the juggernaut that is the Las Vegas Aces. But even still, Edwin, could you please tell the listeners why am I an idiot or why am I not an idiot about the Sparks team?
Well, I won't say you're an idiot. Obviously, someone has to be last. I wouldn't have picked the Sparks, and I didn't. I have them. I wrestled with it as well. I do the predictions for the Lakers and the Sparks. And, I take pride in that prediction and how good or bad it's been. Sometimes I'm really there, and sometimes, I'm a little off. And this year I landed on 20-20. I had on 500. So, depends how you look at that. Glass half full, glass half empty. But I think one thing to remember is, yes, they've had 2 seasons that are some of the worst seasons in Sparks history, missing the playoffs. But that was a different regime, different head coach, general manager. That whole thing's been, changed. And I think, no disrespect to the previous regime, but changed for the better. Curt Miller knows what he's doing. He's won everywhere. He's a winner. Yes, he's missed that title in the WNBA, but there's the Sparks were in the finals. That'd be fantastic. So again, he comes from a program that he built in Connecticut that was spectacular. And I think what you're seeing early on is the benefits of that knowledge. He knows some of these players. He brought in some previous Sun players. He has players on this roster that he coached before, like Lexi Brown. So he knows this roster very well, helped build it, of course, along with the general manager, Karen Bryant. And I think that's what you're seeing already is that they're buying in. A lot of them already know him, so he feels very comfortable. And you're kind of seeing that energy, even though they've lost those 2 games against the Aces. The last game, they didn't look good at all. But that first game, they were toe-to-toe with them until late in that fourth quarter.
Yeah, I completely agree about those Las Vegas games because, I mean, a really interesting game, the first one. The second one, of course, ring ceremony, home opener in LV and LA, just especially with a few players missing, different players for each of those games. Didn't look great. But like you said, I think a lot of that change in LA starts with Curt Miller because when I looked at this team, I really wasn't a fan of what they had put together in the offseason. I thought they had some really good players. I just didn't really know about the depth. We'll get into some of that depth that changed around. But like you said, the previous regime, I didn't feel. And unfortunately, I'm going to be fully disrespectful. Derek Fisher I didn't think he was the right guy for the job, but I think Kurt Miller coming in, and like you said, has a lot of familiarity with a lot of the players already, as well as just building this roster to what it is right now. And I feel like I guess my question for you was what has he brought to this team? But I like a lot of the double bid lineups that are working a lot better for LA that just weren't working under Derek Fisher.
Yeah, I think the big lineups are good, definitely an improvement. Obviously, different roster as well. You know, he's added players like Hamby, who's been sensational. Just what, like 9 weeks after giving birth, he's like giving you 20 minutes. Like it's absolutely ridiculous. And I think one thing he stressed during training camp and throughout is defense, defense, defense. Our defense is going to be the establishing, point of the team. And I think you saw that, especially those first two
Mm.
games. They were leading the league in steals, and they were making everyone work for everything. You know, Diana Taurasi went like I think 4 for 17 in game one, and Asia Wilson had a similar shooting percentage. She still scored a lot because she found a way to get to the line and draw fouls, but her field goal percentage was atrocious against Shanae. And that's because they were making her work so much just to even give the ball, denying her the ball, making sure she got the ball up high, a foot more, in front than she wanted, a little bit more to the left, just making it work a little bit more. And it was pretty effective. They almost won that game. So I think what's impressed me so far the most has been the defense. And honestly, it's hard to do when I watch basketball again and again because I rewatch so much, film. I think it's just for any fan, it's fun to just, if you've never done it, pick a player and literally watch the ball game just from that perspective, like just that perspective. It doesn't matter who the player is. You'll learn so much more about what they're actually doing instead of ball watching, which we all tend to do.
Mm.
And I can't do this because there's not cameras like that. But if you ever go to a Sparks game, in person, or if you got time when the camera's a little zoomed out, just watch Kurt Miller. He's orchestrating every play. He's yelling at everyone. There have been times, sitting there in the press row, I've seen the inbounds coming from the opposing team. He already knows before the screens are even set who's getting the ball, and he's already telling them it's going that way, cover them. And then I watch, and a couple seconds later, it unfolds just like he predicted 5 seconds ago. And I'm like, wow, he's his basketball mind is incredibly sharp. I wish there was a camera just on him because he's funny and he's hilarious and he's so smart. It would be entertaining. But yeah, if you ever get a chance, or in any game where the camera zoomed out, just watch Kurt Miller for like 2-3 minutes. You'll see why so many people like him, and why the players have bought in, because he just knows what he's talking about and he's always correct. And it's just been so far a good experience 3 games in.
Absolutely. I really like that perspective because I mean I'm going back and I'm watching a lot of these games as well because I'm over here on the East Coast, and so some of those later games I'm watching the next day or something. But especially with LA, I'll have to go back and watch some of that Kurt Miller film. I
Yeah.
like that. But as we start to talk, I brought up the offense for Kurt Miller. I think that's a really interesting point with the defense because what I've really noticed is, especially those starting guards when they are healthy, the ball pressure has been so much. It's been very prevalent for LA, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that works a lot because of the big depth that they have in the back line to help them. And I think that's, like you said, Kurt Miller pointing all of that out. And then on offense, I like a lot of that double bid to bid action. That's a lot of fun to watch. But we'll get into kind of this guard depth because I mentioned their ball pressure defensively. And like I said, a lot of moves in the offseason with Kurt Miller. You bring in Azare Stevens, who I'm a huge fan of. Derek Hamby, you already mentioned, coming back so soon, incredibly impressive, along with the Dumates, who stayed in LA. But then they bring in Zaya Cook. They bring in Jasmine Thomas, who has familiarity with Kurt, and that goes along with Elijah Clarendon, who came in as
Right.
well to go with Jasmine Thomas, Clarendon, Jordan Canada, Letzi Brown, Zaya Cook, Carly Samuelson, and then Nia Clouden late in camp. That's a lot of talent at the guard spot, and as so far we've seen Kurt being very willing to play 3 of those guards at one time, maybe even 4. But I guess my first question regarding these guards is what is the right combination of guards to be starting, and who needs to be coming off the bench for this team to be the most successful?
So that's a big question. I might have to ask Kurt that question myself. I think it depends on what your offensive philosophy is.
Hmm.
And in my opinion, it should probably just be two, unless the advantage of three is so enormous that you can't resist. And I feel like Kurt's a little more on the three than I'm on the two. I think we probably literally view it a little differently. So I might have to find a way to ask him that question. But I think for him, he likes the three guard lineups. I think he likes it. He likes spacing the floor. He likes almost not necessarily positionless, but kind of where they can switch. And he has two ball handlers that he feels comfortable with, and he feels like that's fine. So I think that's how Kurt does it. For me, I'd say he only goes small when it actually brings you the advantage. When there's a talent level increase that's so good that it's like, okay, it doesn't matter that it's three guards because this is still a better 5-player rotation versus just saying, oh, let's stick to a role. We're only going to have two guards, and then you have a worse 5-player unit. So I think for Kurt, that's how he looks at it, just trying to find the best five. And sometimes for him, that is three guards, four guards, as you've mentioned, and then just one, big to essentially grab rebounds and set screens and set pick and rolls. So that's how I feel. But I think he's very different. LA basketball fans are very well aware of this because Darvin Ham from the Lakers loved his three guard lineups, and that's the one thing it kind of drove them, a little wild because they were not happy with it. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. So I think it'll be interesting to see how those lineups, once we have a little bit more data, how those 3 guard, 4 guard lineups look on paper. The net rating and all that, and also how Kurt's going to change things around because he generally runs a pretty tight rotation, 8-9 players. So it'll probably still be those same 8-9, but how he kind of plays with that puzzle there is going to be interesting moving forward.
Well, I guess my question for you, Edwin, from there is we see those 3 guard lineups. If they only have 2 guards, I have more questions about this guard room, but the forward spot, I think Katie Lou Samuelson was about that three that was necessary, obviously out at least the
Right.
start of this season on maternity leave. But I question who you see fitting into that third spot. Do you maybe see 3 centers or bigs playing down low?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I probably do see 3 bigs. Maybe you put in, you can see lineups like Shanae, Neka, Hamby, right? She can be a
Hmm.
slasher. She's someone who can kind of not handle the ball like that, but she can do enough, right? I think that's probably the best option unless you go 3 guards. But that's why they have so many guards. That's been one of the complaints. Sparks fans have had is it's a little too many guards. You're gonna have to probably play 3 because once you start doing the math on who's on the bench that's a big a forward or a center, it's kind of slim picking. So I think that's what he's generally going for. Again, I think he went with the more talented players and felt that gives him an advantage over just saying, hey, let's just literally have X amount of forwards and centers so people are happy with the balance. So I think he opted for more of that, guard heavy rotations and a guard heavy roster.
Sure, and I guess I kind of lean that way as opposed to playing more bigs down low, because one of the big questions for me, and unfortunately I was way too pessimistic about this roster, was the shooting, and so I guess even amongst the guards, are you concerned with the lack of shooting on this roster?
Yeah, I am. I would say because we know Jordan Canada doesn't shoot much, and really your shooter is Lexi Brown, which is a great option to have. She's a firecracker, and I think she's going to have a career year this year. I'm positive of it. She's already putting up those kinds of numbers, and we're just getting started. I think the more confidence she gets, the more she understands that her leash is a little longer here. I think she's going to definitely have a breakout season. So she's a great player. Carly's a great shooter. They do have some shooters, but I will say it feels a little light on the shooting department, especially when you have someone like Jordan Canada who's playing so much and she really doesn't shoot often the three and doesn't shoot it that particularly well. It is a concern. I think there'll be many games where you'll see the Sparks lose and think they just didn't have the shooters tonight. They went 5 for 15 from three or something, and they passed up some threes and no one could get it going. And that is definitely a concern where the offense will stall a little bit. But that's why hopefully when healthy, Neka and Shea can say, okay, we're not hitting threes, but we're taking it to the hoop. We're getting our close shots at the rim and we're converting that way. But yeah, I would agree. 3-point shooting is definitely, I think, lacking on the team. So the ones that do it, they have to be great because there probably isn't any other players that can step up.
Yeah, well, Leisure Clarendon, Jordan Canada, like you said, not huge shooters. So Letty Brown and even Charlie Samuelson, I don't feel great about only because she is on that hardship contract. I know she's a great shooter, but you're relying a lot on someone on a hardship contract. So hopefully, Charlie can hang around for a long time, but Jasmine Thomas coming back at some point, to help with that. But then I don't know who starts, who comes off the bench. The other player who has been awesome to start the season is Zaya Cook, and from South Carolina, 14 points in her opener. My question for you there was where does she kind of fit into this rotation if all of the guards are healthy? How much time does she actually end up getting as a rookie?
I think probably between 15 to 25.
Mm.
So that's a significant. I think she gets a couple of shifts. She's fearless. She's she's so fun. She's got an aggressive energy. She's not cocky or arrogant or anything like that. I also don't like to like put my own opinions on people. I don't know her. Like she how cocky or arrogant is she? But just the vibe I get from a few games is that she's just very aggressive in terms of just trying to play the right way, playing hard, and just almost like she doesn't know any better. She just goes after it. I saw one play. I think it was the last game, the blowout game, where she just went right at Candace Parker. And while she was doing it, I was like, "What are you doing?" And she got blocked really bad. And then I think she tweeted something like, "Well, I'm just getting them out of the way." And it was like that kind of fearlessness, like the fact he went at Candace Parker like that, and she just like smooshed it. I think she fell on the ground, the ball hit her back, and all that. And Zaya just got up and said, "Okay, cool, let's keep going." Right? It's like she's got a short memory like that, and she's just going after it. So she's a lot of fun to watch. She's going to be a lot of fun to watch. She'll make some mistakes, sure. I think in the second game of the season, first one against the Aces of the season, she kind of got gassed in the fourth quarter. She's a rookie, right? So she's going to hit her walls and all that. But overall, yeah, she fits great. And I just don't see a scenario, unless she really falls off a cliff. I don't see a scenario where she's not getting regular rotation minutes somewhere in that 15 to 25 range.
Yeah, big fan of what she brings. Like you said, that confidence that you can see on the court. The mid range shot is really nice off the dribble, really
Yeah.
skilled from South Carolina. I can see that 3-point shot getting a little bit better, but again, you just love to see her like challenging Asia Wilson a few times, just
Yeah.
even in against the drop or in transition, like you mentioned, and just getting swatted or missing badly. But you like to see those takes, and I'm a fan as well with Zaya Cook there. Jordan Canada, the last dart I kind of wanted to touch on. I know a very good player, but I just I kind of lack an appeal there. I don't see the appeal from a starting point guard who can't shoot from out there. And I acknowledge that completely. She's a fantastic leader, a really good passer. The defense has stood out to me incredibly, and I think Kurt Miller really likes that. But especially with this team with shooting, I'm curious to where she fits. Hopefully, some better shooting comes around here. Like you said, Letty Brown having a great start at that guard spot. Teddy Lou Samuelson coming back, Charlie Samuelson, both able to shoot the ball really well. Regardless, down to the low post where the bigs played, and the Adumates.
Sure.
They've been starting so far in the season, but Azare Stevens at some point coming back, De'Erica Hamby, like we mentioned. Joyner Holmes has played pretty well, in my opinion, so far. Do you think the starting lineup sticks with those two Adumate sisters?
Oh yeah, 100%. Maybe Shanae, takes a back seat and goes to the bench. But honestly, I think she's playing the best I've seen, in this short stretch so far. There's no way I would take her out right now. And Neka's Neka. I mean, that's like a non-starter. So Shanae, I can kind of maybe see, but I highly doubt it. I think they're the cornerstones of the team. Obviously they have an incredible bond, and I don't know if Mecca's improved because she's already at like an incredible level, so she's kind of just sustained that level. But Shanae has improved. I've seen Shanae grow even from last year. She stretches the ball more. She's able to shoot from deep more. She's able to handle the ball a little bit more. She's still not like a point forward necessarily, but she's talked about she's not afraid of trying that kind of stuff, and she's kind of showed mixed results, but some good results as well with that. So I think Shanae is also solidified as a starter there. I think that's probably where things will go. But like you said, let's see what happens when Stevens comes back. Let's see what happens as Hamby gets healthier. Maybe there is some shakeups there, but I think for the time being, yeah, those two are a lock to start.
And I've said this on the podcast before, but I'm a big fan of what Azurá Stevens brings on the defensive side with her length, but also offensively able to space the floor. So I was really high on her coming into LA, but like you said, Shanae has been awesome so far. I think spacing the floor, that's the one thing I'm really noticing down low is they're able to work together because they can really space each other out.
Yeah.
So I mean, like there is always a big on the floor who can shoot from three. So while one's going to work in the post, the other one's across the court and ready to either take a pass and go in or take a pass and shoot. And I think that's really positive. So I guess speaking of that, what are some positives that you've seen from this LA Sparks team so far this year?
Like I said, defensively, I think that's been the strongest thing. The defense has been very strong. I think the growth of Lexi Brown has been one of the most impressive things, and the same with Shanae. Those are still kind of like the biggest highlights. One thing that's interesting about Kurt, like I said, he keeps like a really tight roster, and he's very serious. Like I remember he brought Zaya back in. It was like a 30-point blowout, and she had that she had like a slight like it seemed like an injury or something, and then she was cleared. She came back to the bench, and they brought her back in. I'm like, it's a 30-point blowout. Why bring her back? And he said she was cleared to play, so he trusted the player. And I'm like, well, the game's kind of over. I don't think he needed her, but that's his mentality that he's gonna just no matter what he plays every game like we're playoff elimination. I'm playing my best players, and I'm running a tight ship. So there's some negative to that, but I think overall for the fans, that's a positive. A coach that cares, a coach that's always going to put the best foot forward, and the players also get into that. You're not going to see players. There were times last year, down by 8, the sulking started. You knew it was over because you knew okay, it's going to become 18 in 5 minutes, and then the bench players are coming in, like they're waving the white flag already midway to the third. And with Kurt, regardless of the result, you're not going to see that. He's going to play the best players. They know they're going to play. They don't have to worry about, he's going to give up any minute now. He's going to pull me. He's not going to pull you unless he thinks you're not playing well, and then he's pulling you for someone who thinks going to play better. So he's always looking for what's the best option for the team and always looking to win and attack. And sure, that can get tiring, that can get exhausting, but I think that means you're going to get an overall better product on the court.
And I think outside of the one game where Las Vegas goes super team mode, a really impressive game against the Aces just a couple of nights before the Phoenix game. I think we really were able to see kind of the inverted offense with bid to bid actions where a bid is finding a bid down low, high low actions out to a 3-point shooter that is a bid and able to knock it down. The offense is just so much more fluid than the double bid lineups we saw a year ago from this LA Sparks team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that formula, like I said, it's able to work because they're able to shoot out there. But I think what we saw against Las Vegas is that formula with two bids against Candace Parker and an Asia Wilson or a Bree Stewart and Jonquel Jones. I don't know that formula works against the best teams. But my question for you is whether or not that's good enough for them to be in the top half of the league at the end of this year.
Yeah, I think they will be in the top half of the league. I think they will make the playoffs. I think they have a shot at top 4. I wouldn't say they're going to get it necessarily, but they have a shot at top 4. If they can get a little bit above 500, I think they have a shot at it. It's going to be a combination of so many things, right? How well they can manage. Can they stay healthy, right? They had to sign. Who did they have to sign? On another hardship exemption, it was
Ray
Burrell. Yes,
back.
Ray Burrell. Yeah, she just took the drive or whatever. It had to be there because they only had 7 players available. So she made it 8. That's how bad it was. They had like a flu bug going around. NECA missed a game. Shanae missed the game. So they've just been unlucky with that. Luckily, it's not too serious in terms of like long term, like the next month or anything like that. But it's hurt them already. They didn't have NECA for one game. They don't have Shanae for the other game. Both games were against the Aces. That's how you quickly end up 1-2. And you know how this league goes. A little hiccup, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, if it wasn't for June, maybe it would have been, this and that. So it's really hard. You got to stay healthy. That's true in any sport, and in the fast-paced world of WNBA, it's even more important. So that's probably the biggest concern. But I think if they're relatively healthy, just relatively, at least as healthy as everyone else around them is, I think they'll be at 500. I think they have a shot at that top four, and I think they'll make the playoffs regardless.
Yeah, I think this definitely was just a two-game hiccup. Probably a good game, or a good couple of games to if you're going to miss players versus the Aces, where it might not have
Yes,
mattered anyway. That's perfectly
exactly.
fine. 37 games to come. You see them right around 500, but maybe even a little bit better if they're hitting that top four, because I felt the same way after that first Phoenix game. I think there's only room to grow. My last question for you really is at full strength, with Jasmine Thomas coming back healthy, maybe Katie Lou Samuelson, although I don't believe so this year.
Yeah,
Um,
I doubt it. I doubt it.
yeah, yeah. But even without her, uh, Jordan Canada, Nessa Dumate playing, Shanae Dumate playing, everyone at full bore. How does this team really peak and head maybe into that top four?
Yeah, I think the way they peak is to stay locked in defensively. That's going to be important. They're going to need to have Lexi Brown's going to have a career year. I mentioned that it's like when she was one of the X factors for me during the preview of the season. I'm like, if she can take a jump, that gives them that comfort. Same with Stevens. She needs to take a jump too. She's like a great, almost like a backup quarterback where you love them more than the starter because you see her for Spurs and you're like, it's awesome, but you haven't really seen her, with a bigger role for a consistent amount of time because there's always someone in front of her there in Chicago. Here, there's a little bit more room, as you mentioned. She can even maybe start. So, okay, we're going to find out. Is there a reason James Wade wouldn't put you in that spot? Maybe it's too much for you, or was it just a matter of there was preference, and they had a championship roster, so we understand why rock the boat. So she's going to have an opportunity to prove for herself and to everyone else around. Yeah, actually, it was more of an opportunity. I'm even better, right? So that's another player to watch. So I think the path to getting to the best version of this team is Lexi taking that leap, Azrae taking that leap in a bigger role, and then if you can have your rookie be a rookie of the year candidate, now that gives you a little bit of an opportunity with that depth, with that mix. I think they can make some noise if all those things kind of break their way.
Really excited to see how this team looks at full strength. I'm very excited to see how Kurt Miller works some of those lineups, the 3-guard lineups. I think Leslie Brown, like you said, having a career, I think that needs to come with her as a floor spacer, as a movement shooter, rather than a little bit more playmaking, which we saw against Las Vegas. A lot of early turnovers, at least in that last game. I think with more players returning healthy, she can fit right into that role. And Jordan Canada, Elijah Clarendon, Isaiah Cook can go in and create the offense like that. I'm excited to see where this team ends up. The main question is, how good is the Sparks team? Obviously, I wasn't high on them, but I am much higher on them now. I am sorry to the Sparks fans, but excited to see where they go. Edwin, thank you so much for joining me here on a pro basketball show. I guess any last takes you want to get out before we hop off here?
No, I think I'm all set. Just make sure you're watching the Sparks, and you can follow me at eCreates88 on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, the whole thing. I'm doing my best to cover the Sparks, to the best of my ability, and the Lakers as well. But obviously, they're in the offseason, so it'll be mainly Sparks content from here on out. And I'm excited about seeing the rest of the season and covering it and seeing kind of how everything unfolds.
Can't wait to tune in again. I so greatly appreciate you, Edwin Garcia, on a pro basketball show. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Thank you so much for tuning into a pro basketball show. You can catch a pro basketball show on streaming services such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify with live broadcasts on playback. Make sure to follow us at APBShow on social media platforms such as Twitter and Instagram, with more coming soon. Until next time, I am Andrew Willett. Thank you for tuning in.